Hello, everybody. I'm a practicing therapist and a doctoral student of psychology. Today, we're going to talk about what women notice in less than 3 seconds. It is usually up to 3 seconds, but we do see it can happen prior to 3 seconds. And it is usually that they notice the size of your upper body, particularly the chest. They look at that area, and then soon after, they do look at the pelvic region. Not necessarily the size of that area, but more so to signal connection and attraction. So it usually is, if she's attracted to you, that you might see that occur. The study shows that we found that women's eye movements when looking at a man's body tends to land on the chest, followed by the pelvic region, and then soon after back to the midriff area and then the face, okay? And so these visual bias, I guess, towards the upper body is usually, as we see, associated with the perception of physical strength. The research is going to be in the description box, and we will also touch on this type of research more. We can talk about it in much more detail in the community because, it has a little bit of different guidelines. And if you want to join our community, that's pinned in the comments. And so, yes, this does happen in around 3 seconds, less than 3 seconds. We also saw another study that is an eye tracking study, okay? And the participants, this is particularly women, often fixated on the face, but that was not the first place they looked at. What we saw is there is an increased attention to the face and pelvic regions, suggesting that while women do look at the face to evaluate safety and attraction and comfort, she first evaluates more biological components of this man. And it signals that he is physically strong. It signals that he is possibly and likely able to have children. And so we are seeing that, from a very evolutionary psychological perspective, she is evaluating first, is this viable for her to have kids with? Is he strong enough to protect our potential offspring? Once that she can see that, then she's seeing, okay, is he safe? Is he comfortable? What does he treat me like based on eye contact? Is he uncomfortable with me? Is he anxious around me? Is he able to hold some of that eye contact? And so women, which is less common with men, women take a little bit more time to evaluate these things because of all these potential reasons. A good concept that we see a lot in research that can kind of help individuals to understand where this is coming from, a very common reason why this occurs is when a woman is pregnant. And we talked a lot about this on our group, and we're going to talk about even more. She is obviously carrying his child, but it's harder for her to protect herself, but her life also matters due to the fact that her body is carrying that baby. And a man who is able to have a lot of these characteristics, from her mind and her perspective, he is more likely to protect her offspring. That's also why eye contact is important as well, and we touch on that in a couple videos, but we also touch on that in the group. This suggests that women are looking for comfort, safety, and intimate compatibility while surveying or looking for what is best for her and her potential offspring with this particular man. So why does this matter? According to evolutionary and psychological perspectives, we see from an evolutionary psychology perspective, the upper body doesn't just signal strength, but it signals physical condition. So a person who has what we're seeing, it has a strong or the research mentioned like a upside down triangle shape. You guys have mentioned what that word is called, and I always forget, and I really apologize. Basically, his chest and shoulders are wider than the most of the other areas of his body. And this signals a physical condition that shows that he's strong, but likely he's also, this is not necessarily accurate, but it can help. He doesn't have much genetic barriers to which will be passed on to the offspring. So that's important as well. Once they evaluate these areas, the face offers social cues like eye contact, like I had mentioned, symmetry, which is what we're going to talk about in a little bit, and then emotional expression. Okay, so why is symmetry important from a evolutionary perspective? Like from an evolutionary psychology perspective, but also biology? There is research that does suggest that some symmetrical components does signal that the individual is free from certain genetic barriers. Obviously, most people are, so this is not really an issue that most people struggle with, but likely a long time ago, certain things were a little bit more prominent and more common in the genetic pool. And so this is why some of these things are still rooted in how a woman operates when looking for a viable man. And so these components offer biological and psychological relevance, and it's information, right? Health and fitness, and then social information, confidence, friendliness. But we also had touched on this before. Having comfort with emotional expression and eye contact shows that you will have a community. And usually from this perspective, a long time ago, men that were more, I guess, highly perceived in a community, he was the one that got more resources for him and his family. He was the one that got medical attention for him and his family. And so by the fact that you are able to be more socially adept and comfortable with eye contact and her observing your face, does show that you will likely have those resources as well. Not that that's the way our society works anymore, but it is true. If you have more contacts, more people know what's going on with you. If you have a lot of friends and let's say your wife is sick, a lot of those friends will be aware of it. Maybe their wives will be able to help you or cook for the family. And so it still is a component. This community component is there. So that's why the upper chest, the pelvic region, and then face, okay? And so interesting enough, we also saw that women, when they're evaluating the face, and so the upper body is something that it seems like is a very quick perspective, and that is usually how she vets a man for viability and connection, etc. But women stop on the face normally because she's observing his eyes and his smile, followed by other features. And so this is what she is perceiving as friendliness, but also confidence. And we talk about confidence quite a bit on this channel, but I think it's important to realize why smiling and eye contact might be perceived as friendliness. It doesn't mean you have to smile all the time or you have to give eye contact to everybody, but the perspective is that you are comfortable with social situations, meaning that if there is something that you need from another community member, that you can ask, that you have people in your network that's able to do so, that she and the child you guys have won't be isolated from communities if you guys have children. And even though she might not want children, emotionally, biologically, her body is typically preparing for those things, as yours is, right? This is not just for women. A lot of men are not necessarily thinking as detailed about this stuff, but they do. They definitely do. There's research with both genders in this research as well. And so these are some of the reasons why, to summarize, a woman usually notices your shoulders and your chest area. Not your shoulders, but your shoulders are usually expanded if you have a larger chest based on this shape here. So she notices your chest area, then she notices the pelvic region, and then she notices your face, to which she focuses on eyes and smile and comfort in social situations. The research is in the description box. I hope this video is helpful to somebody. Please like, subscribe. I will see you in the next one.